Call Sawyer County Finance Committee meeting to order. Ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Ron Kinsley,
Here.
John Righeimer,
Here.
Stacy Hessel, Tom Duffy, Dale Schleter. You have a quorum.
Let the record indicate we have a quorum. Next item is pledge allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Number 4, certification compliance open meeting laws.
This meeting has been noticed to the public and news media as required by section 19.84 of the Wisconsin statutes.
Thank you. Number 5 is the meeting agenda. The agenda is set. And number 6 is public comment. Anybody wish to speak to the committee? We ask you to fill out a paper and we ask you to state your name and address. And first is Miss Linda Zoomer, please.
Linda Zilmer, resident of the Village of Birchwood and Edgewater property owner. I have 3 items for public comment today. One of them is to ask the county to look into what has been the past practice of releasing mineral rights at no charge. So at one time, the county acquired land properties due to back taxes. At the time that happened, the county reserved mineral rights. There's a matter that came up this month where a land developer is asking the county to release not just mineral rights, but also flowage rights. And just based on the feedback from TJ Duffy, well, we've always done this in the past, but there's value to those mineral rights. There's, when you think of property bundled rights, you have the surface rights, mineral rights, the flowage rights, and I think the county should be receiving some compensation for releasing those rights and at least covering the costs. Second item is last night at Public Works, there was an ordinance that proposes to allow the county highway commissioner to contract with towns for services. And I think most of us think about past practice on, yes, the county can bid on individual projects, but as I understood this ordinance change, it would also allow the county to contract with towns for taking over the town road maintenance and construction. And I think that's a little bit different because there is a personnel and other cost to the county of taking on complete town service. So I would ask the county to look into the financial matters of that. And that I think when a matter of taking over a town responsibility for town roads, that's a different situation and deserves more discussion and policy. And then the third thing is I again this month really enjoyed the exhibits that you'll be looking at that are an analysis of sales tax. I would ask that the county dig up what Dave Berard and the Sawyer County Economic Development Corporation did in the mid-2000s, which is the second home study. And you can look at numbers and you could look at trends, but I don't think it's attributable to tourism. That second home study identified that it was the second home property homeowners that really contributed to the economy. And this week, within the last 2 weeks, Matt Coors presented to both the Wisconsin Towns Association Sawyer County unit and to the Economic Development and Extension Committee about the trends in demographics here and then also home ownership. So I think a community this size would not be able to support 2 large furniture stores, but for that second home thing. And I think the numbers are a good starting point for discussion, but I think analysis needs to be done on what's really driving the economy, not just tourism, but second home ownership. Thank you.
Thank you. Casey?
Hello, Casey Callahan. I live in Miles Lake Road in Minong, Wisconsin. I work for the sheriff's office. I'm just here to reiterate the importance of the out-of-county take-home vehicles, both for the sheriff's office and the highway shop. Both departments risk a lot for the county. Obviously for law enforcement is obvious, but with the highway workers coming out in storms and risking their lives as well. I know some may think that it's kind of like a free ride or whatever, but we are going to have to pay that $3 a day tax as well. We're taking time away from our families. We have to check on earlier. When we check off, we still have to commute home. People that live in the county have the benefit of going home for lunches or holidays. And again, other agencies surrounding counties are, still looking for people to work for them. So I just wanted to thank you again.
Thank you. Kevin?
Hello, my name is Kevin Hagman. I live in the city of Minong, town of Minong as well. I work for the sheriff's office. I'm kind of just here to touch on the same basis of the take-home squads. I know there's been a lot of conversation within the county the last couple weeks here on these issues. I just wanted to reiterate the housing market and the problems that I had moving here in the last 2 years. I just started in Sawyer County 2 years ago. My young family kind of went through the ringer trying to find housing, trying to make it work up here. My wife is a teacher at the high school as well. Just wanted to reiterate those same issues. I know there's been a conversation, but I don't think we can really place any sort of small level of importance of what that was, and trying to get guys from out of the region to come work here, to stay here, to start their roots here. I think we need to seriously consider what we can do to not just retain the people that are here, but encourage law enforcement or other members of our community to come here and work with that, not just the Hayward housing market that's high, but post-COVID and those types of issues that are compounding those effects. Certainly myself and Sergeant Culhane would be willing to answer any questions that you guys have when it comes up in the meeting. Feel free to ask.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak to the committee? Lynn, is there anybody online? Thank you. We'll go to number 7, approve the minutes of the previous meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
Motion by Mr. Righeimer, second by Ms. Hessel to approve. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Number 8, Finance Department report.
All right, we'll start with sales tax, if Lynn can pull that up. This is the January settlement, what we see so far, and it was down from previous years. Actually, the last couple of years it's down from. This would reflect mostly settlements from November. Always runs about 2 months behind. So we're going to start seeing what this weather has for an impact on our local economy through sales tax. So that'll be kind of telling as we go through the months here. If this trend followed, and again, it's early. Like I said before, this spreadsheet, I've got formulas in here that projects out based on each month that we add. So basing it on 1 month isn't very good practice, but it would be below budget. But again, we're using what we were over budget last year to put in a different fund. For an instance like this, if we do not hit budget, we would have sales tax money available there to supplement the current year budget.
Mike, can I ask you to move your mic back towards you a little bit, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
I don't have an outdoor voice, but I'll try. Any other questions on sales tax? All right, moving into a budget update, we're still looking at 23 budget. We are almost done closing up, but there are still some grant receipts coming in and other receipts. And then we have had a couple later invoices too, but for the most part, we're getting close to closing things out. We're in a good position. We hit our revenue number without even doing the draw from fund balance that was planned. So that's really good news. On the expense side, we are not going to need to do that fund balance draw. Basically, that's a draw to transfer to HHS for placements. We had another decent year with that in HHS, so we will not need to do that draw. So that also affects our expense side in a positive way as well. So overall, we're in really good shape. We will be talking about some fund balance designations later. That a lot of that's due to where we are ending up this year. So it's good news. Any questions there? Oh, the other two ones that we look at, HHS, they are running a little bit of a deficit still. But they have built up a pretty good fund balance of their own to absorb that, so we should be fine. And then highway is running positive. We have not done the closing entry for depreciation. So once that is done, it's gonna be pretty much a break even for 23. Moving on to CIP. Had a little bit of activity in January. We purchased a squad. We had an airport state match. Those can lag 2 or 3 years even. So it's hard to tie it, to something we did recently. It's probably a project from a couple years ago that we're just getting invoiced for. Those are, I believe, is it 10% match, Andy? Or five? Yep. IT did some cameras out at the highway. I think those are exterior cameras. And then they did some network upgrades as well. The final one was when we put this in CIP, we were originally doing this year by year, a few heat pumps a year. What we ran into is we were going to have to transition to a new type, which would have been a bigger cost down the road, and also a space issue. If we bought them all right now, we could replace them now and save money down the road. So that's what we chose to do, and that was in the CIP for this year. But I'm just showing that we purchased those, and they are all on hand here, so that's good. All right, so next we're gonna go into tourism. And this is just, it was brought up last month to take a little deeper dive into it, so that's what I'm trying to do. It's gonna be a little hard to see on the screen, so I did hand out a copy of this. It starts with the blue chart on the first page. And what this first one is this is taken from the Department of Tourism. It's a report from 2022. And what I did is I compared Sawyer County with those same counties that I'm using for the best comps for the elected official wage study that we did. So they are counties that are in northwest Wisconsin, all rural and all within 30% plus or minus population of Sawyer County. So what you can see from this first page is Vilas is kind of off the charts, but it's not Minocqua, it's right above Minocqua, but it's including Manitowoc Waters and Eagle River and all those up there. So they're very heavy reliant on tourism as well. But you can see Sawyer County compared to even the ones that touch Sawyer County, we're quite a bit ahead as far as the impact tourism has on us. The last 3 columns are something I added. It's a calculation. What I took is the employment and divided the income produced by that labor. So basically, it's not necessarily the wages that are earned per capita, but it's the amount of revenue each person involved in tourism in Sawyer County and the other counties generates. And what's interesting about that is Sawyer County came out number 1 plus in 21, plus we had a really big increase for 22. So we even widened our gap in 22 on the per capita revenue, which is just interesting. Doesn't really mean anything other than, I guess, the tourism we have runs pretty efficiently. Any questions on this first one? The next slide then is a little bit of a dive into sales tax itself. And again, this is going to be hard for those looking at the screen, but sales tax is broken down by all other industries, wholesale trade, retail trade, information, accommodations and food services, other services, and not reported. So what I want you to focus on is the green one, which I think probably everybody can see. It's kind of the third bar down or third line down. And that is accommodations and food services, which you would attribute primarily to tourism, the impact of tourism. And so that you can see it ebbs and flows. Obviously our season biggest season is summer months where people come up for vacation, enjoy the lakes and all of that. But what I want to point out is that both the other industries and retail really flow with it. The rest of them are smaller and it doesn't really impact it. They're pretty straight all the way across the year, but the blue line and the red line really flow with what we would attribute to tourism. So I just want to point that out, that it does have an impact. It's fairly direct. I'm not saying it's exponential because the gap runs fairly consistent, and actually retail, the gap over the last few years has grown, and there are some reasons for that. Other things that affect it that we'll talk about in a minute. But the point is, when people come here, they're not just staying at a cabin and going out to eat. They actually are shopping downtown, taking advantage of our attractions and other things. So I think that's important to keep in mind.
Can you explain a little bit of the graph shows the difference between 72 accommodations and food service tourism of 44?
So 72 is the code that the state uses for accommodations and food services. And that's what I would say is tourism for us. And then 44 is retail trade. So what I'm showing is the correlation between people coming and staying here, going out to eat, but also how it affects retail trade.
Thank you.
The ebbs and flows really follow the green line. So. Oh, one other thing I'd like to mention. So, and this information is statewide, but over the past 5 years, people on tourism spend 14% on transportation. So that's gas and whatever to get here, 27% on lodging, 26% on food and beverage. So if you took that state number and applied it up here, that'd be 53% are spending the money on the lodging and the food and beverages, which is leaving 47% that's being spent elsewhere. And statewide, 20% is on retail and 13% on recreation and entertainment. And I'm not making, go ahead.
I'm just gonna jump back to Ron's question. The 4472 is based on the NAICS code.
I didn't realize it.
And then, so if you ever want to look that up, you can go into like 72 and there's a 5-digit numbers that break down even further.
Okay,
But it's, yeah, hotels, restaurants, that type of thing.
thank you.
That's where they're based from.
I didn't realize that was the code.
Oh, sure.
Accommodations.
Oh,
Thank you. Go ahead, Mike.
all right. So any other questions on that? I don't know statewide versus Sawyer County what the percentage are on retail and recreation and entertainment. I would think we'd be a little higher on recreation and entertainment, but I don't know. I suppose in the cities you've got bigger things to do, but people come up here and get a fishing guide and whatever, mini golfing, go-karts.
Mike, if I could just make one other like editorial comment too, when we look at the numbers. So what they'll do too, especially for the tourism study that the state puts out, is they'll kind of look at the population of the area and how much, normal population is expected to spend on retail trade accommodations. And then, kind of look at, okay, well, how much is above that being spent in the community? And they attribute a lot of that then to tourism. Because I think the important thing when you look at the economic impact is to figure out where the dollar came from to begin with. And tourism, generally people are generating that dollar in another market and they're coming here and spending it so that it fills our bathtub. Same thing with manufacturing. People are buying those products that are made here from LP somewhere else. And then that money comes here to pay our employees and they buy the wood and that fills our bathtub. Other types of retail trade, restaurants are turning the dollars over in the community. But when we look at what do we want to focus on to create prosperity in the community, it's bringing dollars in from elsewhere that's distributed into our local residents as employees and service providers.
Yes.
Can you give me your thoughts on what the Premier Resort tax would do if that was allocated for Sawyer County? Would be good, bad?
Can I defer to next month on that?
You can definitely do that.
That came up at a meeting, I think we were both at, right? And Jess brought that up. I don't want to go off the cuff on that because I mean, certainly has some benefits, it also probably creates some issues as well.
It's not just Stark County asking, it's Bayfield.
Yep.
Surrounding counties asking.
And that's a great point that Andy brings up. Like if I make $1 here and spend it in Sawyer County, that turns over a few times, but if the dollar is earned somewhere else and comes in, that does make it exponential then. So that is a good point. Next then, this is a bar graph that shows accommodations and food service as a percent of retail. So what I did with this calculation is I took the dollar amount spent in food and accommodations and then divided that by how much was spent on retail, just to get a percentage. It's not a percentage of the whole, it's a percentage versus retail. And what this shows is that Sawyer County was very consistent around 27% up until 2018 is when online sales were mandated to collect sales tax and the county portion was put back to the county from which the sale originated. So that did change things there, and you can see a little bit of dip in the percentage. And that doesn't mean that food and accommodations went down at all. It just means that all of a sudden retail went up. So that's why the percentage dropped. And then the next thing that had an impact was the COVID shutdown, because for that first year, that really affected travel. We know that there were a lot of shutdowns and everything. And we've kind of struggled to get back, it went up again the next year, but it's leveled off from there. It's not at the same percentage that it used to be. But again, that kind of coincides with maybe more online shopping after the shutdown. I mean, anecdotally, I know a lot of people just don't go shopping anymore. They do it online and get it sent. I don't like that. I still prefer to do it locally, but to each their own. So anyhow, we developed a new baseline, which has kind of been consistent now for 3 years post shutdown, I guess I would say. Any questions on that? The next one is another kind of comparison of retail versus accommodations and food service. And here's where you can really see why that happened, why we went from 27% down to 20%. And that's the explosion of the retail. And again, a lot of that is due to the online. The other factor that really impacts that is inflation. If something was $100 last year, now it's $110 this year, well, that's automatically increased in sales tax because the base is more. So you always have to look at that through that lens too, that outside factors do affect this. Any questions? And you can see the dip in 2020 on the accommodations and food services, but then we had a nice rebound and steady growth again. All right, this last two graphs and two charts here, this is information versus CPI. So I took CPI right off the government website. But when you look at CPI, there are different bases you can grab. There's the overall CPI, but then I also tried to compare retail and accommodations and food services versus what was more a CPI that more reflected that activity. So in the charts below, I've got the whole CPI. So if we look at it, I've got the annual retail sales tax, and then I've got the percent increase. Then that next one is the CPI and what that did year to year. And these are December numbers year to year. And then I took a net of CPI. So basically I backed out the effect of inflation on to get an accurate figure of what really happened in the activity. And then I further took the CPI and I backed out food and energy from retail, thinking that really doesn't affect retail that much, to come up with a net that way. And then the graph above is showing the CPI net of food and energy. I didn't explain that very well. Are you guys following that? It's easy to think about, it's harder to explain my thought process. So the blue part of the graph above is what CPI did. So that increase is shown there. Then what I did is I added on the orange line, which is the actual activity increase, which gives you the total increase for the year to year in December. So some of them actually look like they're negative, and that's because the activity, either activity or CPI went negative. But the overall amount on top is accurate to what the actual increase was then in the sales tax activity. So you can see that the last 3 years, CPI has become the inflation reflective of CPI has been a much bigger issue. Now, we still had very good years after the shutdown of real activity, which is the orange portion of that graph. So the activity did increase quite a bit, but there's also quite a bit of inflation. So that's both on the retail side, which is the left column, and then the right column is the accommodation and food services, which would reflect the people coming here. So again, 2020, you can see the orange bar went way negative, and that's because of the lockdown. They weren't coming here. There was still an increase, and a lot of that was due to inflation. And then 2021, there was a huge rebound in people actually coming here, along with some inflation. And then 22, there's actually more inflation than new growth, and same for 23. So any questions on these? Maybe I confuse you too much to even ask a question.
I don't have a question necessarily. I think it's very good information. I think this would be good information for economic development to have. So I don't know if Andy, maybe not go through in depth like this, but at first sight, to me, just glared out of the question I would have, and probably not to this committee, but more to economic development, is what's Violet County doing that we're not doing? Does that something we aspire to be, not be? I mean, like, well, I mean, right, whatever it may be, but is it something that are we content, or is there a way to be better, to be more like them, or maybe we don't want to be like them? So it's maybe more of an economic development piece, but boy, from as far as business goes, they're kicking our butts. What the influence of Chicago, they're closer there, or, I don't know what it is. Maybe there's nothing we can do about it. Do we care? Don't we care? That's my only question. So maybe economic development, that'd be a great, I think, discussion. But good work. Thank you.
I think that we're all going to be in the same boat looking at 2024 because nobody has snow. So I think who's ever the most creative is going to win this year.
I've had some conversations being at some meetings this last week about that. The silver lining, if there is any, is that nobody has snow. So hopefully it's going to be who can win spring and summer, because people are they're not going elsewhere to snowmobile or ski because they can't. So hopefully we can get those dollars in the spring, summer, fall.
But kudos to our businesses because they're doing no snow efforts and ATV, UTV efforts. So if we can continue to promote that, I think.
I'm not being critical of what we're doing. I think it's just, I still don't know what government and the county should or shouldn't do to help. But I mean, I guess one example would be, and I don't know if this is a tiny example, but we're the only county with ATV roads closed off. Does that, obviously that's less business. I don't know if it matters that much, but that's just an example of, I'm not saying what we're doing is poor. It's just, is there anything we should be doing or enabling to help grow that?
And I can talk to the Hayward Lakes to see information. They have a pretty good idea. I mean, strictly if we looked at number of accommodations, heads and bed, like how many beds are there to put heads in? I think Violet has a lot more beds. I think even like miles of shoreline have something to do with that.
Sure.
What's developable, but we can dig into that and see what the difference is.
Thanks.
Something that relates to that is I talked to a gentleman the other day that is in the laundry business, and he said his laundry business that he does for resorts is down 30%. I mean, it's all related. Excellent information, bring it to us. I appreciate that. We all appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Next is a designation of fund balance. These would be assignments to different funds. So this will go from general fund to different funds. There also are a couple we would be looking to do within the general fund, one being the sales tax that we talked about last month. I think it was 258,000 above budget. That would go into an assigned within general fund. And then ambulance, we would, whatever that net income ends up being, would be an assigned, which would then reduce the ambulance levy for 25. But these three that we're looking at today, Resource Development Fund, specifically for dam projects, we have a rather large one, Fish Trap Dam, coming up in probably 25. We would like to put $500,000 of general fund to that. That will directly reduce taxes in the future because otherwise that would have been on a CIP levy in 25. So that's the first one. Second one is the Highway Fund. If you remember from our audit presentation in December, we have Highway Fund has a healthy fund balance. It does not have a healthy unassigned fund balance. So what that means is if all of a sudden everything hit the fan and we had to pay all of our debts all at once or liabilities all at once, we would not have the money to do it in the absence of selling equipment. So this transfer of $450,000 would help with their cash flow and level out their unassigned fund balance. Questions?
The date on the resolution is incorrect. For the Finance Committee, today's the 8th, not the 11th.
Thank you.
So I would make a motion to approve with that correction.
Again, we are still closing out. These are estimates. And then the final one is the Courthouse Addition Fund. This amount is arriving from basically issuance cost. We spent about $142,000 to issue the $8 million and the $4 million. If we don't pay for that outside of the debt service issue itself, then that leaves a deficit there, which that's what this is. So it's not that we went over budget on the project, it's replacing the funding source.
So I did make a motion, but what you're asking is for a motion to approve or to table till March?
I think you haven't brought it on the floor yet, but we wanted to, I mean, your motion would be to approve. But yeah, we brought this, I think more so for information this month to show you where we think, but we're still closing out the 23 books to, I mean, unless something's changed.
No, the resource and development one probably wouldn't change. The highway fund, if we wanted to just make it net zero, that could change a little bit. Like right now, it would take, I think, $426,000. I rounded up to $450,000, but that one could change when we close out 2023. The courthouse addition, I could get the exact number for that too, for the issuance costs if we wanted to do that.
So there's no hurry for this, so.
There is no hurry, no.
Bring back real numbers, or what are you thinking, please?
It was asked for discussion and possible action. The only thing that I saw that alerted me was the date was incorrect, but I mean, I think Mike has proven that he knows what he's doing, so I'm not afraid of those numbers. If there's an action that needs to be taken, I'd like to approve and with that date change.
So we have a motion on the floor made by Ms. Hessel to approve as presented with the date correction. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Righeimer. Is there any further discussion? Question, you're gonna bring more back next month with other items? I guess this will take these three off the plate for you,
All right.
potentially. Okay, so we have the motion and we have the second. And if there's no discussion, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
I,
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Mike.
Mhm.
What do we got next?
Next is a treasurer's report that was sent out to you individually, I believe. I guess I really can't answer questions on that, but
I communicated a little bit by email with Jadine. They're busy. She's not here because they're busy trying to close out. January 31st is the last day you're supposed to be paying your taxes. Obviously, they get more taxes in, but she did put information, good information in here for us to be aware of what's going on in the treasurer's office. And I also point out that I don't know how they get it all done during tax time. There are just 3 people in that department presently, where we used to have 4, and that makes a difference everywhere. Because I know that they share, like in the clerk's office and register deeds a little bit. So I think they do a wonderful job with what they got. Does anybody have any questions on the report? Thank you. We'll move forward.
moving on to the investment report from December, another strong month in earnings, about $92,000 again. So we are over $1 million for the year. Great. Hope it continues a little while longer. You know, there's been some talk of dropping rates, but it hasn't happened, so we'll take it as long as we can. We are getting some quotes for CDs just to have some things locked in case rates do start to go south a little bit. At this point, it still isn't making sense because the money market rates are higher than the CDs, but we want to get ahead of that drop rather than behind it. So it's a strong possibility next month we'll be bringing forth recommendation for a little bit of a CD ladder, maybe $3 million worth.
What are they looking like for CDs, may I ask?
Well, it varies on the term. Anywhere from 4.65 to 5.25. But we're getting a little better than 5.25 on our money market still. So it doesn't make sense yet, but a day is coming.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions regarding that? We'll move forward. Number 10, I believe.
All right,
We have
the
a printout for that.
elected official compensation for the next 4 years. We've looked at the study that we put together based on those best comp counties that we've looked at in the past. Our recommendation at this point for the 3 positions of county clerk, register of deeds, and treasurer is to take their wage at 35 hours, prorate it up to 40 hours and go with that. If we do that, compared against 2024 salaries, that puts us at about 106% of comps. Now, one of our comps has already approved wages, Rusk County, and they're going up a fair amount. About $200 over where we would be at. But they were one of the lower ones. If you look at the sheet with the map, that shows the counties and what each one is paying and also where they are in proximity to us. Vilas, Jackson, and Buffalo I've got in here. They are a little bit outliers compared to the rest that basically touch us, but Rusk was on the low end, as was Sawyer. So I'm probably making a correction as well.
You know, this is what we ran into problems, or I don't know if it's a problem. It was a problem. last time we did this, because you're searching out 4 years in advance,
Mm-hmm.
and that's hard to do. And you want to treat them people with respect, and you want them to keep up with the rest of what we're paying the county employees. So if this is what it's presently at, I would like to see it at 92%, 93%, 93%. I think they should be moved up higher than that. I'm looking at the one with the map on it.
Look at the bottom comp though, because that, where you're looking is the, against all counties in the state. That gets skewed by the larger counties down by Madison, Milwaukee,
Okay,
quite heavily. So look at the one that says best comps at the bottom.
So the 99.
Correct. And look at the 40 hours in, because that's what we're proposing. So they're at about 106% of current comps.
yes,
Didn't we approve the 40 hours last month?
yes, we
So we
did.
don't have to worry about that.
Correct. What we're recommending is that the salary would just be what the 40-hour calculation would have been. And you're right, we're shooting at a moving target. We know what it is now. We don't know what other counties will be doing 4 years from now.
Just in the most recent, we're trying to gather just to get some real idea of what other counties are trending. Like Mike said, there's only 2 nearby that have settled, or one's been approved by the board, the other one hasn't gone to the board. And even in the statewide numbers, it's less than 10 right now that we've been able to get the idea of where they're going. And the other 8 are larger counties that have adopted theirs for the 25 through 28.
Can you tell us about Price County? I understand that they approve 1 year at a time. And I think we had a legal opinion. We didn't think that was correct.
Yeah, and actually that was a topic on the WCA discussions earlier this week. What Price County does is they adopt the 25, the first year's salary for those positions. And then in their resolution, it says that the employees will get whatever the across the board increases for the other employees. That's determined every year. Yes, our council and the council for WCA questions the legality of that. There's also, because it part of brings up too that if there are years, and there have been years where the counties have not done an increase for the general staff, that means the elected officials don't get one either.
Yes.
I just, if we're going to compare other counties, that's great, but we have to look at our funding source also for these positions and the fact that, they know what the pay is going in, and that's what the argument has been for other topics of discussion is, well, they know what they're getting going in. So I just want to be clear, if we're going to use that method of thought process of looking at other counties, let's use it for all of our decisions then.
Tell us about this other one with the map on it. Please.
That is just the expounded data of that bottom part I directed you to. So the one I directed you to is the averages. The one with the map are the individual counties that make up that average. And again, these are counties from northwest Wisconsin considered rural, within plus or minus 30% population.
So the bottom line is, can we afford this? Can we afford this pay increase? Yes, so I would make a motion to approve.
Second that motion.
There's a motion by Ms. Hassel, second by Mr. Righeimer to approve what? 40 hours at this rate?
So if I could, yeah, there's a resolution in the pack that we left the numbers blank on. The intention would be to adopt at the bottom of the spreadsheet. There's a brown box that has the recommendation. For each of those positions, it shows the yearly salary, and then the amount increase every year. So those numbers would fill in the boxes that are blank on the resolution. The numbers in brown at the bottom.
Yeah. So use your prediction and tell me where we're gonna be at in 4 years. The best you can, and no one can answer that, I know that. It's, the question's irrelevant. So we have a motion and a second to do this, and then it would get forward to the full county board, correct?
Correct.
Any other discussion? This bothers me a lot.
Lacking in price.
Yeah, I know, I wish there was a better way, but I know there's not.
So the prices.
No, I don't, because I want to be legal also. So, okay, we have a motion and we have a second. We're gonna vote. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, administration, for putting these numbers together for us. Makes it easier for us. Next item, number 11, Otter County Vehicle Policy. Information, discussion, possible action.
All right, you've got another handout for this data. Last month, we looked at a proposed cost of doing this. We have better data since that last meeting. So the little box on the far right that's really the actual cost of the 5 deputies. I took the mileage that they live outside the county, plugged it all in. So that we know. I was also asked to find the cost of hiring a deputy, which would be the cost of not taking up this action. So I'll walk you through that. That is the center chart. In the green on top, those are costs that are going to be incurred no matter what. The physical, drug screen, and psych eval. The blue one in the middle are variable costs that are going to depend on what we have on hand and how much experience a new deputy might have coming in. So kind of a worst case scenario would be $11,350 would be the cost for bringing them in. And then if it's a brand new recruit altogether, the academy costs about $9,000. There's a state reimbursement of about $5,000. So that cost would be $4,000 for a total possible cost per deputy of $16,185. So you could compare that to the known annual costs of $23,855. So basically it's about 1.5 deputies. The other thing we were asked to take a look at is what counties are doing around us. Rusk, Washburn, Barron, and Burnett are allowing the out-of-county squads. And you can see the allowed radius there, 20 miles for Rusk, 15 for the other 3. And then the information we had was Price, Bayfield, and Ashland do not allow them. So it's a little heavy on allowing versus not allowing.
Question that on the far right, 23,855 is for all 5.
Correct.
Thank you.
The center was for.
Per deputy. Yep.
The center was for. Are.
Yep.
And the change too from last month is the all 5 on the right. We're able to do a little bit more focused as to current 5 deputies where they actually live and more precise mileage for those.
And presently we have, what's the radius? Are we at 15 or 25?
25. I should say 25 is the residency requirement for sheriff deputies.
And that's not as a crow flies, it is the road.
I believe that's the way they've been measuring it. In our policy manual, it does not specify. And for the miles calculation, we use by road miles actually measured to the residents.
Ms. Hess.
I was going to make a motion to approve and bring to the full board the out-of-county vehicle policy change and allowing the county squads to be taken at a radius of 25 miles. Sayre County can be bigger than the rest of the counties. We don't have to always be the same.
Well, let's get the motion on the floor, then we'll have discussion, if that's acceptable to you.
I'll second.
So we have a motion by Ms. Hessel to approve the 25 miles, taking the vehicle out of county. You got a question?
No, yeah, it's similar to Tom's question. Oh, I don't know what Tom's question is, but so our job is to allocate the dollars, correct? So we're saying if this goes through, it's an idea that we would allocate dollars to, correct? Management, that being the sheriff, and I don't want to speak for him. It's at his discretion whether he wants to do this or not, correct? Or are we managing it? We set the power.
Well, that's a really interesting question.
Because wouldn't management have I don't know what he's gonna do or not do, but I mean,
Yeah, one of the reasons it has not been done is that there's a policy prohibiting it. Now, if that policy is removed, the rest of the policy leaves it up to the
you
discretion
would have the option then.
of the department head and the county administrator.
So we are allocating dollars and changing a policy, which would give management the option to enact that or not.
Right.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Mr. Duffy.
No, the sheriff is here. Let's hear what he has to say about that.
Take one and pass it around.
Do you wish to speak?
Mr. Chair, thank you. As originally presented, I do think this is going to do two things. It's going to help with retention. It's definitely going to help with recruiting. Regarding the policy, I've said before and fully intend to support county policy, and as a department head, elected official, you guys are the legislators with that. I will support whatever policy you enact regarding this issue. So if you allow out-of-county squads to be driven outside the county to the residents, I will support that. I think the recruiting side of this, it's going to be huge. We have counties to the south and to the west that allow this. To the north and to the east, they don't. The city of Hayward and Price County, to my knowledge, are the two agencies that don't allow their officers to take home squads. I think this is going to enable a lot of recruiting power for us, especially in those two agencies in the future, to solicit more good officers to work for us.
Thank you.
So, Sheriff, I understand you're going to support the policy that the board adopts, but do you recommend this change?
I think it definitely will help us in the recruiting side and potentially in the retention side too. We did lose one, and we had discussion afterwards, and he knew this was probably going to pass.
So your answer is yes, you do
Yes.
support it.
Yes.
That was a good comment.
Thank you.
Can I address that?
Yes.
So literally last night, I was thinking about how this conversation might go and how a motion might be formed. So I did draft up what I just passed out. I'll put it up on the screen. You can use it or not use it, or, obviously amend it as well. Because this is, like Mr. Rickheimer was saying, there's two components to the consideration that we're talking about. One is the budget impact, the other is the change in policy. And like I said, our personnel policy prohibits taking of assigned vehicles outside the county line. So this resolution, I tried to lay out everything in there to help form a resolution that goes to the county board so we can get it all covered. Let me just try to blow this up so people can see it. So it just starts out that we allow county vehicles to be assigned for employees. They can take them home if it's determined to be in the best interest of the county. Right now, we have a policy requiring deputies to live within 25 miles of the county line. But if they do not live within the county boundaries, their squad has to remain within the county boundary. It is an issue with attracting and retaining employees. Public safety has recommended that deputies who reside outside the county be allowed to take their squads to their residence, and which would require a policy amendment and potentially a budget amendment to accommodate the increased costs that was not planned for this year. And so what I have in there is some language from our personnel manual. First one is the new employee recruiting and onboarding. The residency requirement is, this is in section 1, item under residency, section 3, would be amended. Two things that I did. One is add by road behind 25 miles. That's highlighted to clarify how we're going to measure it. And then striking the language that currently states that a deputy does not reside in the county squad must remain in the county boundary. So it takes that out. Then the other part of our personnel policies that would be applicable is under section 4, facilities, equipment, and vehicles, use of county vehicles. And specifically in section 4, it talks about what we just mentioned, that we do allow vehicles for commuting for the sheriff and highway department employees. It's required to be authorized by the department director, in this case, the sheriff and the county administrator. Goes through the other language that's already in there, but the addition and the IRS implications if it is used for commuting. So I added in, and this, is just based on some of the conversations I've had with board. You can amend this how you want, but it clarifies that employees assigned a take-home vehicle for the purposes of performing their job duties under this section will be allowed to take their vehicle to the residence if they reside outside of the county. If the employee resides within the 15 road miles of the county line, they'll be taxed under the applicable IRS regulations for commuting. If the employee resides beyond 15 miles of the county, as I wrote this up, they would be required to reimburse the county for all miles beyond the first 15 federal IRS rate. That can be changed. Be it further resolved that the 2024 budget would be amended to provide additional funds to the sheriff and highway departments for the additional operational funds. So based on the estimates, would be sheriff 7,000 and highway is 2,500. Highways, less vehicles, and actual increase of the current budget is not as much because some of that was already in the budget for having a take-home vehicle within the county. And those are operational. Those are like the gas. That's the on Mike's spreadsheet. It's the annual operating costs. The larger number includes the additional turnover of vehicles that we wouldn't feel the impact of till a couple years down the road.
Just a point of clarification or my understanding. So it's our subcommittee that's recommending this to the board?
The way this is worked, it started in public safety. Public safety recommended. To accomplish it though, it needs a amendment of the personnel manual to strike the language, which is under the jurisdiction of the admin committee. And then it came up about the cost and.
So are we solely approving the cost then more so than the policy?
Yeah, I put this as a combined, but that's really your focus area.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question. On the front page, under number 1, you have new hired employees will be required to meet residence requirement within 1 year.
Yeah.
I guess I was thinking in the counties, but no, just to meet within the 15 miles. Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, that's the 25.
25 miles, not.
Thank you.
I just want to take a moment to applaud the efforts of everybody involved in this. I think that it's telling that we're actually taking it on, and I applaud everybody for doing their due diligence.
Yes, there was a lot put into it. So we have the motion, we have the second. We're ready to vote. No other comments? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. So that goes to the full county board after administrative in an hour.
Right, just so the motion that was approved, you just read that back, so you know.
Then you want to read what you got, please?
A motion was made by Ms. Hooker, please allow the out-of-county squad policy cost within a 25-mile radius and forward to the county board. My question is the word cost need to be in there or just policy? Because I know we talked about the cost policy / cost. Is that what you'd like that?
All right,
I'm sorry, what?
the cost / the word
Yes.
cost / policy.
Yes, because I feel I'm more voting on the cost, really.
Okay, I think policy. Thank you.
Okay with that?
What's that?
You okay with that?
I'm okay with it. It's approving a motion. We'll work with it. It'd probably be based to see what comes out of admin. Could come out as a different motion.
Well, we'll worry about finance and the administrative, and worry about administrative. All right, what do we got next? Number 12, ambulance, EMT ambulance. Mike?
All right. So now we're looking, because this is always a 12-month rolling, so we're actually looking year to year now, 23 versus 22 versus 21. Same data. So if we look at the aging report, one thing that's getting a little concerning is the amount we have 120 days and older. We're up to almost 31% now, which is the highest it's been. That's the next slide if you can. The overall amount is fairly similar to what it's been. We're just shifting a little bit to a little bit older. Any questions on that? It's going to be reflected in some other stuff too. The average calls per month, we're up a little from last year, still down from our peak years of a couple years ago, 2 and 3 years ago, but good movement. The average billed per month is just under last year. And like I mentioned, the last couple months, we've been looking at our billing practices and making sure we're maximizing everything. I did talk with John 2 weeks ago, and we're going to see a catch-up billing here in the next few months, so that'll help a little bit. We were able to rebill some things that had been underbilled, so that'll help with the numbers. The average collected, though, is the good news. We're up from last year by $10,000 a month, even though the billing's about level. Still not quite where we were, but our calls are way down from 2 and 3 years ago as well. The next slide shows percent collected. And we are better than we've been the last 3 years, so that's good news. Our percentages increasing, even though we've got some older ones hanging out there, the percentage is going up. The next one shows what's billed and what's collected. Even though billings per call is down, the collections per call is the highest it's been. So again, good news, we're doing a good job collecting. The next slide shows all of 23 where the calls went to. And again, as we mentioned, it's kind of a concentric circle. The further out you get, fewer calls there are. And we've also got most of January. I think it's through the 20th for 24. And the ranking is similar. Obviously, numbers are different, but still the calls come around Hayward City itself. The net income, again, this is not final, but that amount of, if it's held, 373 would go into a assigned fund balance, which would reduce the 25 levy for ambulance service. So that is good news. These next 4 pages, I'm wondering if you feel you need to see these anymore. This report's getting to be quite lengthy. And I don't know that this tells us a whole lot. It was good to see it at first to show where the collections are coming from. Most are private pay. Anything that says latitude or lat is going to collections. So do you feel you need to see these anymore? All right, I'm gonna take these off. Thank you. And then next is one that I added a couple months ago. These are the charges that are written off per month and a running average. And you can see the last 4 months have been above average, which coincides with how we're seeing more heavy on the 120 days and greater on the aging schedule. So that's something we need to maybe dig a little more into to see if there's a cause for that or why that is.
Like to keep that on there though.
Yeah, this one I'll keep on. This was good information. And then the next one, which I guess is the final one, is what is being sent to collections per month. And anything that's a negative, or no, not negative, but the items reversed are ones that went to collections, but then were brought back because we discovered we could collect them. So we don't see a lot of that, but every now and then we'll have a few of those. So that's the interesting thing. December was where we saw a lot on the backside of the aging schedule, but not very much went to collections. So that could be one reason why that number's higher too. Any questions on ambulance billings?
How much do we write off a year?
Well, if I totaled this for 23, it would be 495 less those bottom 5 numbers, which would be about 320,000.
And is there any effort to collect old debts that have been written off?
Yep,
What's that policy?
we do that internally still.
So what's the policy? How do they do it?
That
Who does it?
He goes Strong's out, what's up?
Yeah, and actually, the ones we're doing internally are ones prior to LifeQuest. So LifeQuest, once they can't collect or feel they can't collect, they send it to Latitude, which is LifeQuest collections agency.
And do they keep it forever or do they write it off in 10 years and 5 years or 2 years
You
or?
know, they're writing some off every month. And what they're writing off is since they started in April of 22. So I'd have to find out what their policy is.
So are we pretty aggressive as far as trying to collect those old debts?
From what John has told me, we're doing a better job than we were previously.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
The other thing I'm waiting for that was asked last month, and he reached out to him when we haven't heard back, is what percentage Latitude takes of things that go to them.
In just my couple of years being on the board, this is the most information that I've seen. So I think that that's great that we're learning more about how to make it better.
It's a big number. We have to be on top of it, so.
Good job.
That's all I've got.
Anybody else have any questions for Mike or Andy? Number 13, future agenda items. Would it be appropriate to give an update next month on the building remodel, where we're at financially?
Financially, yep.
You get that, Linda, or Lynn? Anybody else have any requests for next month?
Question. In the airport, to discuss there. I'm getting phone calls, emails. Is that a federal issue? Where is the county's responsibility or decision-making start and end with people's concerns about, because
It's a federal requirement to have a master plan. So we've had a master plan in place before.
Okay.
It's getting updated now. Our responsibilities, I mean, at some point, after the consultant gathers information, has the public meetings, they will come to us with a update for the master plan for us to review and accept. Now, in that master plan, we are not obligated to do as they put in the plan.
okay,
But I mean, if there are like, just as an example, if there are safety issues that are turned up as part of the master plan, then we might need to address.
so they have a master plan, they make recommendations. I'm just throwing an example here. You got different type of aircraft coming in, there needs to be an expansion. We say, we're not gonna do that expansion, we don't have an airport then. Or do we?
No, we would still have an airport.
We would just restrict the,
But if there are safety issues that are up and we're not complying with FAA guidelines for safety, that would be something we would need to do. Or it might affect our.
so there may be something as far as an expansion that has to take place because the federal government is saying, if you're gonna have this airport, you must do X, Y, Z.
I wouldn't want to put us in the corner on an expansion, but part of what's happening with, the runway is going to be resurfaced in 2025. There are some safety things that had to be incorporated into that design, so it didn't lengthen the runway, but it did address what they call the thresholds at the end of the runway, and we're putting in like, and this was at our choice, the runway would be scored so that there's better traction for the larger planes coming in or out.
Okay.
With that, I'll add that the master plan that's being put together, there's a meeting on March 6th for public input. Now, this goes under the Public Works Committee, which we met last night and we're aware of this. So anybody that wants to come to this master plan is on the 6th. That there's two, one in the afternoon and one in the evening.
At the afternoon is the kind of the public public advisory group, the kind of the pilots and the tenants that they gathered to provide input. We did, I don't know if we mentioned this last night even, but we did ask for them to add a couple individuals. So there's one of the neighbors is now part of that group, as is a representative from the town of Hayward. I think that meeting is at 2:30, and then at 5:30 is what they call the public information workshop, where the consultants will be sharing what they put together to date and some concepts or potential recommendations that they're working on as part of the planning process.
Will you send that invite to the full board or is it just to Public Works?
No, the full board will get the invite to the public information session.
Okay, great. 'Cause that's,
It's to the full public.
yep,
Yeah.
good. Yep. No, I've been getting calls too, but that's because I live next door. So.
Who's making the recommendation of expansion? The federal or
That's-
the county
that's
or?
called-
No, there's no, I mean, there probably will be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a lot of calls.
How did this get a topic? How did this topic get on the table? Who
The-
recommended it to start with?
no,
How did it-
the way
Because master plan.
the way the master plan works is the consultant drives the process. They work within the federal guidelines. I mean, the FAA has parameters for what the master planning process includes and how it works and the things they need to incorporate into it.
But is the plan to expand?
We don't know.
The
I mean,
federal?
it's not
Meeting on the 6th.
it's not based on, we want an expansion, put us a plan together for us to expand the airport. Their job is to look at the airport design currently, what planes are flying in or out, they have projections as to what the future of aviation is like, where planes are going and safety features. And they're gonna put that together and come back and say, this is where you're at, this is where regulations and safety and the future of aviation is going. And if you want to do this, then this is how if you want to expand, this is what you would accomplish with that or why you might want to consider it. Our airport is trending differently than it did 20 years ago with the number of piston aircraft flying in or out versus the number of jets flying in or out. So they put together that data to show you what's happening. So there is I know the perception and there's justification for that because that's what happened 20 years ago when that master plan was completed, there was a footprint change of the airport, and a road rerouted. And so I think the natural thought is that this plan is going to lead to an expansion. That still is going to be in the hands of the board to decide of any of the recommendations that are made, what do you want to take up?
Does this affect us financially, or can we adjourn this meeting?
This is, we're updating you on other things going on.
Okay, thank you.
I'll ask one other question. Are there planes that are too large to land here?
Yes.
Is this airport adequate for what we need or?
I'll let the consultants tell you that. I don't know. I mean, there are other planes larger that can't land here, yes.
Can we have this on economic development? I don't see this on our agendas. I think this does affect economic development because of that.
Yeah.
That's a question in point. Are we restricting people? No, I shouldn't say this. And some people don't like growth no matter what it is. We have to have good growth. And it'll be nice to know beyond what happens when you build something to the environment, what also impact it would have, economic development, obviously financing and so forth. So I think that'll be helpful to know on the economic development side.
Certainly can be done.
You can, I would recommend adding it to this agenda as well, because there actually is some other funding unrelated to the master plan that we're gonna have to address as well.
You get that then? Anybody else have anything else? Hearing none, meeting adjourned. Thank you for your valuable time.